a story that is attributed to the great British politician Winston Churchill, in which Churchill asks a socialite if she will sleep with him for £5 million, which is roughly 6.4 million US dollars. And the woman sputters, well, now, Mr. Churchill, I suppose so, but we'd have to discuss terms. To which Churchill replies, well, would you sleep with me for £5, or about $6.50? The woman replies indignantly, Mr. Churchill, what kind of a woman do you think I am? Madam, he replies, we have already established that. Now we're just haggling over price. And this is how we live in the world, jubilants. The ego has established what kind of greedy, needy, recalcitrant people we are. I mean, after all, one of the questions advertisers ask us is, what would you do for a Klondike bar? It's already been established that here in this world, when our ego is driving the body around, haggling over price is really what our existence is all about. What will we do for the highest bidder, for the most success, for the least amount of worry, for the most security? Whatever the price, to our dignity, to our integrity, to our spirit, the ego is willing to pay it gladly. Our ego-based society has beaten into this idea that the only way to be successful in the world, the only way to be happy, is to hustle. Get out there. Make your dreams come true. Do what you have to do. Take no prisoners. Walk over whoever is in your way. Overcome those barriers. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Just do it. Set your intention. Be a success. Pursue your dreams with all your might. Oh, with all your might. That's the ego's might. And that's the ego's recipe for success in the world. Getting something, anything, that is outside of itself. The ego is willing to do whatever it takes to get the golden ring, to get the power, to get the money and the prestige and all the other material trappings that the world says defines success. We know what kind of people the ego thinks we are. Now we're just haggling over price. That word hustle, it may be helpful if we define terms. According to the dictionary, hustle has several meanings, and it's not just the dance. You know, like do the hustle. Yeah. No, we're not talking about that kind of hustle. The first meaning is what we've been talking about, getting out there, working hard, make your dreams come true. The second meaning is to push or force someone to go in a direction quickly, to hustle others along, to hustle ourselves along. Speed, it's everything to the ego. Hustling is also a slang word for people engaged in prostitution, which life coach and author Martha Beck says simply means, this is what prostitution, hustling means for her, selling your life force, things that you would prefer to do for love, to get stuff. Another definition is to cheat or swindle if we hustle somebody, and that's the culture we live in. We live in this hustling sort of culture. We push or force and we sell what should be given for love to earn a living. And we cheat and swindle ourselves because the house, this ego-driven culture, it always wins. The ego's game is always rigged in its favor and against our higher divine self. And it's a game, this ego's game of life, it leaves us exhausted. It leaves us numb, or like most people just unconsciously playing along because we believe, hey, this is what life is all about. It's about haggling over the price. What do I have to sacrifice to get the worldly goodies that I think I want? We're certainly not the first generation of spirits walking around in flesh suits to have this kind of dilemma. Those Romans that the Apostle Paul was addressing in his letter that we read from this morning, they were having similar problems. Now, they might not back then have had like Klondike bars or Winston Churchill, but Rome was a cosmopolitan city where it was pretty easy to be lured into the ego's price haggling game. Paul, though, he brings good news to the followers of the way back then, and in turn, it is good news for us. And he tells them, you owe the flesh nothing. You do not need to live according to its ways, so abandon its oppressive regime. Jubilants, this is the best news you are going to hear in your lifetime, right here this morning. You owe the flesh nothing. That doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself. It doesn't mean you don't eat well or exercise or treat your body with respect. After all, this is the vehicle that we have been given to exist in this time-space continuum. We are here in the flesh, so we got to take care of the vehicle while we have it. But this is what Paul is saying. You don't need to have any faith in the ego. In fact, he says, if you do, if you put your faith in the body-driven ego and live just to satisfy the impulse of what he calls our sinful nature, then you will die. Well, of course, every body in the world eventually dies. But what he's saying is if you follow the ego's ways of price haggling with life over how much you're willing to sell out your love in exchange for fear, your spirit will die long before your body gives out. When we are wrapped up in the price haggling ego, we are pretty much the Walking Dead. We are zombies who will do anything for a Klondike bar. That's how low our price is. But Paul says there's a remedy. If you have invited the Spirit to destroy these selfish desires, you will experience life. In other words, if you are willing, even in the slightest degree, to stop playing the ego's price haggling game and put your faith instead in the holy, you will come alive. You will awaken. You will see through the ego's illusory losing game of those with the most toys wins. When we are willing to stop letting the ego be in charge jubilance, then we remember the right use for our bodies, and that is to be in relationship with the Holy Spirit, to be in relationship with everyone around us so we can end our belief in this separation. If we're working on that specialized curriculum that A Course in Miracles says we all have, then the body becomes a useful tool. And we can become wise to the tricks and the deceptions of the ego and instead use our deeper inner wisdom to withdraw our faith in the ego and what it does for Klondike bars and place it where it should be, in that spirit that moves us and gives us life and gives us our being both in this body and beyond. The ego, though, it's not going to play that. It's going to do everything it can to keep us under the spell of this price-haggling game. And one way that the ego does this is to tell us that God invented this game and that you have no choice but to play it. Because the ego wants us to fear God, to make him, and it is always a him, some big angry boss in the sky who punishes us when we're bad and rewards us when we're good. We've built entire religious systems around this God. But that's the ego's God. That's the faith of the ego. It is a quid pro quo system of giving and receiving. If we give rightly, we receive rightly. If we don't have what we want, the ego says you didn't hustle enough. You didn't have enough faith. You weren't worthy of whatever you wanted. But when we place our faith in the holy, Paul tells us the relationship changes. We're no longer employees of a tyrannical cosmic boss. We are children of the most holy. We come into relationship with a loving parent who desires to give us everything without reservation. Everything is already ours. But here's the really good news. We don't even have to get our act together before we express that little willingness. We don't have to get our intention right. We don't have to do mantras or meditations or feel all spiritual and holy. We can feel like crap. We can feel like scrapings at the bottom of the barrel, like we have completely failed at this thing called life, and we can still, with just a little willingness, experience a miracle from the holy. Just a little willingness, a little wish that it could all be different, that there would be a better way. And in that moment, the holy welcomes you home. And this is what the Course calls the holy instant. That moment where we get so sick, we're so tired of playing the ego's game, and we question the ego and its grip begins to loosen just a little bit. And in that moment of relaxation, in that moment of allowing something to be different, we receive a miracle. We have a new way of seeing the world, a new way of relating to the holy and everyone around us. To recognize this new relationship, not one with the angry, exacting God, but that relationship with our heavenly parent. To recognize that all we have to do is be willing, even just a little bit, to let go of the tyrant God that the ego loves for us to worship, and fear. That one that puts us on the treadmill of worldly success and honor and beats us up because we're not hustling hard enough. The Course says when we're willing, the Course says, and I love that the Course says this, the Course says, you're welcome to try every single way that you can think of, except being willing. You're welcome to go, and if you don't want to try that, you're welcome to go and try every single way. And you will find that none of them work. But you're welcome. Don't believe me, go try it. But you already have, right? You've already tried a million ways to remember who you are, to find happiness, peace, and joy. You can go try it. You can hustle, you can cheat, you can steal, you can do whatever you want. But when we get burned out on all of the ego's suggestions for bringing happiness to our lives, which is always about bringing something outside to make us happy. When you're at your wit's end about that, though, all you need is a little willingness, as small as a mustard seed, Jesus says. When we're finally willing to say, I am willing to see this differently, our relationship with life changes. We're not haggling over price anymore. Instead, our heavenly parent has assured us that we are priceless. Breathe deeply. So for Churchill's joke to be funny, we have to buy into the idea that being a prostitute is inherently a bad thing, right? So for instance, if you offered me $1 million to be a trash collector for a year, I would do it. If you paid me $30,000 a year, I wouldn't. Price haggling. But it doesn't make collecting garbage either good or bad. But this is the way of the ego. It convinces us that we are inherently bad, that we are sinners in the hands of an angry God who will exact revenge on us if we don't toe the line and follow the ego's laws for success and redemption. But beware of the ego's tricks about this lesson of willingness, because the ego is going to seize on anything and everything that will keep us in the price haggling game. It will convince us that we are sinners, that we serve an angry God. So it will take this willingness idea, it'll give it a little twist, and it will tell you that it can help you. The ego will say, I'll help you be more spiritual. I'm going to help you. And it will send you out into the world to read all the books on setting intentions and listen to all the latest gurus opine on the subject, especially about those spiritual intentions. And it will have you religiously following all of the steps and arguing that your guru is the best. And nobody should listen to that guy over there. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Because I'm all spiritual. Suddenly the ego. You're back in the price haggling game because you're trying to get all spiritual. Trust not your good intentions, the Course tells us. They are not enough. We don't get the miracle we need by actively seeking for it. You can't get a miracle by hustling or trying to make one happen. That is what the Course calls arrogance, and it's one of the ego's most prominent qualities. We don't encounter the holy instant, that moment when a miracle shakes open our hearts and we see the holy all around us, by force. We can only do it by being willing, by allowing ourselves to be overtaken by the wonder and the awe of this world that we always seem to miss while we're hustling, trying to make it happen. Which is not to say, of course, that hard work can't be a virtue, but don't confuse hard work with what the Buddhists call right effort. Being willing can allow us to go deeper and touch that inner peace that can imbue us with the wisdom to know exactly what action is needed, when it is needed, to accomplish the goals that we're truly here to meet, and that is to learn the lessons of the curriculum of love that we have been given. So we can work hard, but you have to be connected to spirit, in communication with spirit, to know what work is there for you to do. We can't blindly learn these lessons and rely on the ego's guidance. Instead, we have to be willing to see the world differently, to step outside the ego's price-haggling game and step into the realm of God that shows us how to work smarter, not harder. That realm of God, it isn't found in the bigger and better things of the world, Jesus says, but in small things, like a mustard seed, the smallest seed that grows to give shelter for the birds of the air. The miracle of the holy instant, the Course says, lies in your willingness to let it be what it is. But there's the rub. Most often we're not willing. We're addicted to our hustle. And we don't know exactly how to be willing, even just a little bit. And even if we find a way to be willing, the ego tells us you don't really want that anyway because it's going to cost you too much. That Klondike bar ain't worth it. And we use our fear of change to keep us locked in the status quo. But you know that mustard seed that Jesus talked about, it's really a weed, and an invasive one at that. Mustard seeds were the bane of the existence of every farmer listening to Jesus at the time. They probably heard his peril and went, what the hell was that guy sowing mustard seeds in his garden for in the first place? What an idiot. Nobody wanted mustard seeds. They're going to take over everything. And that is the point, Jesus says. You have to be willing to allow the weed of faith to take over everything, to evict the ego as your master gardener and allow all of that invasive love to choke out the false beauty of the ego's garden that is planted with fear and despair and anger and grudges and self-righteousness and arrogance, recalcitrance, if we're willing. The weed of faith will take hold in our garden. It will replace all the blooms of fear with some deeply rooted harvests of love and compassion and charity and empathy and equity. But wait, there's even better news. You didn't think it could get better. A little willingness doesn't just allow us to have a big and deep faith and touch that realm of God right here and right now. Both Paul and the Course tells us that it allows us to become who we truly are. And who are we? Well, the Course and Paul, Jesus, they all agree. We're the children of God. We are the light of the world. We are heir to the miracles of love while we are here in the flesh and inheritors of full unity when the flesh passes. So the only question left to ask this morning, Jubilants, is, are you willing? Are you willing, even just a little bit, to let go of the ego's price-haggling game and instead step into the infinite realm of God, where love has already overcome fear? Are you ready to plant the seed of willingness and let it take over your garden of fear? Are you willing, Jubilants, in this moment to know and become priceless? Oh, yeah.